I don't save anything anymore. It's completely pointless.
Yeah.
Like, it mattered to me at some point when I was, like, really, like, adamant about building a portfolio for myself. Because I thought that, like, I was just going to be writing articles forever, and I didn't think there was another option until I lost my mind. And then,
that was the option, losing your mind. That was the real option that you always wanted.
Yeah, you just Alt F4.
No.
And then you find...
But don't Control Alt Delete, because...
No, never try and control, man.
Yeah.
You can't control anything.
Yeah, that's where Tim Buckley messed up. Yeah. I'm sorry, I'm such an internet person.
Look, hey, I like abortion jokes as much as the next guy. That's one thing I do know. I don't know why I know that one thing.
Because that is his story now.
I know.
I mean, like, even before, like...
But that's
the knowledge that he sexually harassed someone doesn't even come into play. It's just that he made an abortion.
Nope, I didn't know any of that.
See, that's not important. That's not what all they care about is the abortion, because that's what's famous. Yeah.
But, I mean, okay, I was about to be, like, sympathetic.
Like, oh, he made a bad choice, and he also...
Well, I mean, like, he took a strong, bold, creative risk, and it didn't pan out. Like...
And he took a social risk by touching that girl. But, yeah.
I don't know anything about that.
This has been a long time since I've done one of these interviews. This is David Johnson. I'm joined by Justin...
You want me to...
Yeah, say it once so I don't butcher your last name like I did with every person who has any...
That's okay. My name's Justin Amirkhani.
Okay, Justin Amirkhani.
Good enough.
Yeah, okay, so I'm joined by him, the lead creator on Always Sometimes Monsters, this really cool-looking game. Tell us a little about it. Just give us the basic pitch.
I'm a lead writer on Always Sometimes Monsters. It is a game where you play 30 days in the life of a character as you go from the East Coast to the West Coast before the love of your life marries somebody else. And along the way, you play through this story that changes based on the decisions you make, because all the decisions are, like, really ethically charged, and so your moral compass and values come into play throughout the experience, and, like, it plays a lot with decision and choice itself, and it tailors the story to kind of who you are in certain respects, but also lets you play as, like, different genders and races and sexual orientations, and that changes the story in slight ways as well, so that you can have, like, a really customized experience every single time you go through it, and everybody who does go through it will have a very unique experience playing the game.
Okay.
That's the game. Always Sometimes Monsters. It's a game.
Buy it on Steam, May 21st, right?
Yeah. It's like an adventure RPG, choose your own adventure, exploration, non-combat, no magic, no stats, no potions, just like modern day life stuff. So
I looked into the beginning. It's at a, so do you get to, it says it's all at a party, the beginning of the character that you pick to be
the character selection, yeah.
So do you get to mix and match parts, or is it this character? That was what intrigued me about it, because it actually sounded cooler your way.
Okay, so the way it works for character selection, or what we call, like, trait definition, is that you are there's this guy, Larry, he's a publisher, a book publisher, he's throwing a party, it's his birthday, everybody wants to toast him because everybody, like, you know, wants to get in good with him, and you're actually playing as him initially. And all of these different characters are standing around his apartment. And you go and you talk to one of them, and you toast with one of them, and then you become them. And that's just it. Like, all the characters are different, you know, races and genders. And whoever you just talk to naturally, and, like, it makes sense for that character, but you end up picking who is a natural choice for you. And then after that, you have to, like, go out onto the patio to find your quote-unquote ball and chain. and that leads you to another conversation where, like, you talk to these characters, and if you interact with them as if they were your significant other, then they are your significant other. And so that's kind of like the pairing right there. All of the characters fundamentally are the same person. Like, they all have the same dialogue options. They all have the same, they all speak in the same voice. They are the same person, but the world around them reacts slightly differently in certain situations. Not all situations, but certain situations. And certain characters, interact with them differently based on, whether they're black or white or gay or straight or a man or a woman.
So I had a question about this and this whole game in general. Since you basically took a break from making games that you just weren't enjoying and basically saw the world, have you basically blanked out on what games are and are going to this project completely fresh, or are you like, oh no, I'm like this game, or I copied this, or anything that?
Absolutely not. I actually feel kind of somewhat validated when I make something and it sort of feels like another game, because then I know it at least makes sense. It made sense to someone else at some point in time. And I mean, like Jake and I, we love doing little nods and parodies to other games. There's tons of little references, because that's what we came from, is looking at games. Neither of us actually come from a strong game development background. I had one job, writing content for a Facebook game, and that was it. I've had no formal game development experience. Jake's had hobbyist game development experience. This is both of our first real foray into any of this. Mm-hmm. So we come from it. Me on a journalist side, him very much an enthusiast side. We've both played a lot of games. I know I deconstructed a lot of games for reviews and that sort of thing, but which has kind of led me to understanding mechanics and stuff a little better. But in terms of worrying about aping things, no, it just sort of I don't know. The blank slate kind of thing is kind of accurate, because since we don't know what we're doing, we're kind of free, but at the same time, we kind of know what other people did, and so we can kind of get a gauge for when it's going right or when it's going wrong. Mm-hmm. But I say we still have no idea what we're doing.
Sure. So do your actions change? This action makes a different situation completely appear, and stuff like that. Do you have completely, or does it kind of okay, this is totally this way now, and this is how it changes in a different direction, or does it just kind of move on in a kind of, wow, this is different. I haven't. How does all the, because it is made on making morally blank decisions, how does that affect, I guess, the rest of the game if the game isn't making an opinion?
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's about necessarily making morally blank decisions or finding neutral ground, as opposed to applying your own sense of ethics and values to it. Mm-hmm. So, for example, the demo we had at PAX East just a couple weeks ago. Oh my God, time flies. The demo we had at PAX East involved a scene where people are paid upfront for a job where they will be loading boxes from the left side of the screen onto a truck on the right side of the screen, and that's it. That's all you do. And the choice there is, how many do you move? Your boss leaves for a coffee break, you've been paid in advance, and you're just presented with this situation. So we just said, okay, we're going to create different paths for these different ways that people can organically explore the scene, right? There's some exploration stuff. If you want to bum around the warehouse and not really do your job, but you want to look for things around the warehouse, you can find some stuff in the warehouse to poke around. If you want to just say screw it, I quit my job, there's a path there for you. Mm-hmm. And then we have people who love moving boxes, and they move an unbelievable number of boxes, and there's a path for them as well. I don't know if any of them are like, I don't know. I don't think any of those things are less necessarily like morally gray or anything, but like they come down to like your values. Like if you value hard work or you value freedom, if you're a selfish or selfless person, those kind of things like come into play far more than like a necessarily like evaluation of good or bad.
So, how much are you willing to? And I'm going to bring up another developer. How are you guys willing? Are you going to show how the paths have changed for different players? Or are you just making it this person's individual story, and while they still have a conversation about it with someone else, it is not as here's the stats for this decision, here's the stats for that decision.
Yeah, you mean like The Walking Dead, like
exactly. Telltale.
Yeah, no. Okay. Yeah, we don't do that. We thought of different things that would be kind of cool. Like whether we wanted to do an infographic on like where people fell in the story or, you know, different things like that. And then it kind of dawned on me that, well, I know, like, the best reaction I got at the show, it's a funny little anecdote, but I had somebody go through the entire experience, come up to me and say, that was shit. I didn't make a single choice in that game. And I'm like, are you sure? And they're like, yeah, I didn't get to choose anything. And then I said, well, did you do this? And they're like, no. I said, well, did you do this? And they're like, no. Did you do this or this? No. And they suddenly realized that, like, the choices, the way they're presented to you, seem so innocuous at times that you don't even know you're making them. And so it just, like, it's this organic story that, like, comes out of these choices that you're not sure you're making, and the only way you're really going to ever know what was a choice, what wasn't a choice, what could have been is talking to other people. And I kind of like that about it, because it's the same, it reflects life in a little bit of a way. Like, it's
not a center point for a giant explosion about to happen right behind you. It's like your decision still matters, but it could be as innocuous as saying, no, I don't want to go drinking out tonight, or something like that, and it doesn't automatically.
Yeah, right. But you decide not to come drinking with me tonight, and like, what if, you know, that like one person who's like your soulmate happened to be there and you like never got a chance to meet them, whereas like an alternate reality version of you who's just like, you know what, screw it, I need to go and have some fun. Or another version that's like insanely depressed is like, you know what, screw it, I've got no reason left to live, let's just go get drunk into a stupor tonight, right? Yeah. And so now we have these three versions of you. One of them who stays home, never has an opportunity to meet your love interest. And then there's the two other versions, one who goes and gets shit-faced because he hates himself, who completely makes an ass out of himself in front of a love interest and never gets an opportunity to form that relationship, yet also spoils the chance for the relationship that the first person doesn't really have spoiled for them. And you have this awareness of the relationship, and it like deepens your depression and it makes it even worse. And then we have this third one who's just like, I'm going to try and enjoy life and go hang out with my buddy Justin and have a few drinks. And you fall in love, and life's wonderful. And we see how that like stupid, innocuous little choice completely like alters reality for you forever. And you have no clue. The first person who like didn't come out with me has no clue what happened.
Mm-hmm. So I guess, and this is kind of a hard thing to talk about since the game's not out. Do you have anything like a failure state? Like, I'm sure that's always been like, how do we make choices matter and make a story end abruptly, but failure states? No,
you can very, very abruptly end the story. But like, I was always a proponent of like the game being 100% like hardcore YOLO mode. Like, you live once and that's it, and then the game's over. However you find your end in the game, bam, that's it, done. Jake is a much more rational person than me, and so we have save states. And so, like,
yeah.
the instant death, sort of like instant conclusions pieces, they're not as like important. Like they can happen. There's like we've thrown some like really goofy ones in there, and then we've thrown some like just really surprising ones in there. But I've never found any of them to be like significant or meaningful, because you always have the opportunity to just load your save state again. And so with that in the back of my mind as I'm writing, it's really hard for me to get invested in like a mid-story just like ending.
Yeah.
There are ways you can end a game where you don't finish, right?
Yeah.
You have this hard deadline of 30 days to get across the country, and you can not make it.
Okay.
But does that count as a failure?
And does it count as a fail? My other question is the 30 days, and before I just talked to you, I was under the impression that the 30 days in love interest were intertwined. Are they not?
Well, yeah, the wedding is on the love interest is getting married.
Yes.
In 30 days.
Okay, so you need to get to point A from point B.
Yeah, you get really early. I think at the first or second day you get an invite to the wedding.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
And you got to get from point A to point B within the time frame.
But your situational status with that person can be completely different if you even make it to the 30 days.
Yeah, like how your relationship started. They all carry some like similar thread, but like it can be slightly different. The way in which you fell apart, the reasons can be very different. But the pacing of like how you get these scenes and like learn this information is all pretty uniform, because I think it's like it's just a weird little style of storytelling where we like, giving you, like you start the story broken up, but then in the middle of the story you decide how you got together. And then near the in another part you find out how you broke up, and it's like, and then the conclusion we don't even know yet. It's like you get the chunk, like the static stuff, the conclusions, before you get the questions. And so it's like, it's almost like you have an opportunity to try and be revisionist with your history, and that's kind of a way we play with choice a little bit. You can try and like deny the fate that you've already established by like rejecting it and like trying to like fight against it, but then like this deterministic thread kind of weaves its way into your life, and you sort of like find yourself in the same situation no matter how hard you fought against it, as this meta level aware player character, as opposed to just like this character in the story.
Okay, so you do. Is it your perception of what happened in the past, or do you actually have, as the player, have interaction and make what actually happened in your past?
Yeah, like, so, for example, in the PAX East demo, it's a flashback dream sequence that takes place right in the middle of the game.
Okay.
And it defines how you met your love interest. Now, it's all within like the same sort of time frame, and it's all within the same building technically, but where and like what you were doing and like why you met them can vary. Not as wildly as I think is possible. I don't know if it's possible. Sometimes I think life can only really go one way.
Sure, I mean,
sometimes I believe in absolute determinism. Like this conversation we were destined to have, and we're going to have a million times again through eternity because life is cyclical and all that other nonsense.
Sure.
But so you sort of define like the stuff about your backstory and your history with this person as you play through the game.
So, on kind of how the journey to your interest to even make this game definitely deals with homelessness. And while games have attempted to, they usually come off as, kind of like, oh, aren't they so poor? A la Beyond Two Souls, which is, well, these people are starving.
The fetishism of it.
Yeah, well, it's just like, I'll have pizza, but I feel like hamburgers while these homeless people are right next to you. It's like,
The true horror of, like, homelessness to me, and, like, one of the things that I realized, like, while I was hitchhiking and stuff, and, like, I mean, my situation is not genuine homelessness. Like,
sure.
Like, it was by choice. I had a choice in my life, and I made that was an opportunity I took.
Yeah, you're a reporter on the homelessness scene, as it were, at the worst. You can always pull the extension cord if you feel like.
Right, I have a parachute. The true horror of it is the day you realize that you are homeless. It's not like, it doesn't necessarily come the day you don't have a home. Right? It's something far, far greater than that. Like you can believe you're in a bad situation, but be like, yeah, what? I've still got this thing that's like, not far out on the horizon, and like, things are going to turn themselves around. The day you stop believing that, that's terrifying. That's like true horror, where you no longer have hope at all in the world. And the funny thing is, like, I hang out with a lot of people that most would classify as homeless, and they don't necessarily classify themselves as homeless. They don't consider themselves hobos or vagrants or vagabonds or anything.
Sure.
Because they're getting by, they're surviving, they're within a situation that is less than necessarily like the background I had come from, but they don't consider themselves out of the game yet. They all still have hopes and dreams and families and like things happening in their lives. But the day you lose that perception of self, where you say, the day you stop believing that you are not a crazy homeless person is the day I guess you actually become one.
Do you think it's just instinct? Did you meet someone who was like that, where it's just like, okay. I don't know him personally, so,
Like, if you can rephrase the question.
Okay, so, let's say in the game, do you come across someone, or you do have the option to be what you've described, someone who has lost hope or lost a crown.
There's echoes of that through the game. I think in almost every city you experience something. Yeah, absolutely. Actually, I don't want to spoil too much of it, but there's like there's two key gut wrenching moments that like echo pieces of that. One's really early in the game.
Sure.
Where you have to because the game starts off with you being evicted, and you're like, oh, I've got to go and make this money or else, right? I don't have anywhere else to go.
Yeah.
And so that's like one of the first key moments of the game. But then there's this other one later on where it kind of toys with your willingness to help people. And it almost like it shines favorably on Good Samaritans in a slight sense. It's like if you are willing to do good for people, then no real harm will come to you.
Sure.
But if you don't, then you end up on the other side.
And it's interesting and refreshing to talk about a game that can't actually say I am story, but I have these mechanics here. This game is literally story. Like, there's movement and there's atmosphere, but it all if I'm not mistaken, it all accompanies the point. There's not a shooting sequence once you've made a couple choices, you know.
No, yeah. I mean, we have we do have a few gameplay sections in there, but they're mostly in service of shaking things up
and they're not QuickTime events probably as much. So.
No, I think we have we have the arcade games, which are weird things Jake makes. He just likes making weird. We use RPG Maker, and that's not really an engine that you want to try and make an action game out of.
Yeah.
But he keeps trying to turn it into an action game. All these little weird RPG Maker games that are clones of other games. He made a Flappy Bird clone in RPG Maker, which it's glitchy and buggy, but it's kind of funny.
Is that going to be in there?
I think it's in there. I think
always sometimes Flappy Bird or something.
It's he called it Crappy Dog.
That's a good one.
I like it.
Yeah.
And then we have different sections that that are puzzles.
Sure.
Or in a way, I consider even the box moving section a mechanic.
Sure. I mean, Cart Life was all about that kind of stuff.
But Cart Life had this lemonade stand quality where there's this
there wasn't a lot of determinism in it. It was more direct in that way. But, the gameplay of Cart Life was, that kind of idea, not the actual story. The story was pretty linear in some ways, but yeah, so overall, I'm always interested because has Devolver always seems like the best publisher now for indie games. Can you talk about their experience? They always get it's dudes, you're the best.
So I first met Nigel while I was hitchhiking through Austin, and I emailed them, and I was like, "Yo, I want to just meet up and ask you questions. I want to know how you guys do your shit." And so, Nigel met me in this really dive bar on the outskirts of town, and we just shot this shit for an hour or two, just jibber jabbering. And I was at the time I had the idea for this game. Not necessarily what ASM is now, but I had an idea for what the genesis of it was. Mm-hmm. And I was like, does this sound like an interesting game? You're a guy who gets a lot of pitches and shit. Does this sound interesting? And he's like, yeah, sounds kind of neat, I guess. And so from that interaction, after I came home, I hooked up with Jake. We started working on a prototype of this thing. And then they do this really cool thing every GDC where they're really approachable. If you have an idea for a game and you're really passionate about it, and you're yo, I think this is going to be cool, and you're you've put in a little bit of work. It's not just necessarily just nothing. You're just I've got this neat idea. I'd like you to, put
check
together
out Crappy Dog. It's the newest thing in the world.
Yeah, it's got to have something behind it. At least, and a healthy dose of passion.
Yeah.
So we put together this prototype for them, and then we flew out to San Francisco for GDC. And we set up a meeting. We were broke as shit, and we couldn't even afford to go to GDC. So we just met them outside the convention and sat on the floor and showed them our game. And
thing about GDC always rubs me the wrong way, that it costs that much. But yeah.
Well, but it's I mean.
It's
a big show.
Yeah, it is important, and they do have to make some kind of revenue to make it important.
Not even just that, but to rent out the convention space and everything.
Oh, yeah, to make it a thing that is internationally known.
You got to keep out the riffraff like us, otherwise, I mean...
Yeah, then you get all the crappy dogs in there.
Yeah, then you get crappy dogs and like stupid ASM games.
And then they're trying to get like the crappy dogs are talking to like King and like, can we have Crappy Dog Saga and all that kind of stuff? And it's just
Crappy Dog Saga is our next move. I think after ASM, we make Crappy Dog Saga.
Always, sometimes Crappy Dog Saga.
Yeah.
Monsters.
No, and back to Devolver. Yeah, we just
go ahead. I'm sorry.
We sat down on the floor, showed them the game, and then like it wasn't too long after that where we actually got like paperwork and started actually being able to make this thing like with artists and stuff.
So that has always been my interest. First, as some people, some people are like, oh, it's 8-bit. I've never really seen an RPG Maker game that has had a larger, about this size crew. Maybe a little smaller, like 2 to 3, but not this kind of size. Maybe I'm just haven't seen enough of these games. I mean,
no, there's some especially some of like the, like we're in a weird category because like there's the RPG Maker community is actually really big and really active, and there are teams that like have 12 people on them working on games. And they're doing it all just for funsies.
Yeah.
This is what they do for fun. We're in a weird it just happened to be the engine that worked for us.
Sure. I guess that was my point, that I guess it's one step above, it's the same thought is a lot of time thought about IF, that it's only about people who care about IF creating games for it, where this seems to go beyond that scope, and it's just, hey, this worked out in the situation.
What's IF?
It's like interactive fiction. It's like pre-Twine. It's weird.
Oh, okay. Yeah. It's the thing is, we made this. We'd started actually working. Jake had started working building something in XNA, and we were really eager to get to an early prototype stage where we could just show this thing off to somebody, this concept, and we realized that if he's starting from scratch in XNA, or even if we Unity, when we started, Unity wasn't as popular as it was right now, and Game Maker had only just started. It didn't really have any, none of the porting options were really around now. So they might have seemed better choices, but either way, we would have had to build movement systems in from scratch, build animation systems in from scratch, build inventory systems in from scratch, build all these little features that we just had baked into the RPG Maker. Plus, RPG Maker was something I used when I was really little. When I first I was oh, video games are neat. I'm going to make video games when I grow up. That dream that I've completely forgot about and then refound later on in life. It was RPG Maker that I started working on, making stupid Dragon Ball Z fan mods and stuff.
Sure.
So it was kind of semi-familiar, and we just it just happened to be what we made our prototype in, and we just well, we're not going to go and rewrite all this, right? And we're nah. So we just kept rolling with it, and now we're releasing the game. Plus, we'd seen To the Moon come out.
Yeah.
To tremendous success, and that was kind of inspiring, and we're oh, okay, it's not going to be just this random weird thing that we're making. It can actually work.
Yeah. Always Sometimes Monsters is on Steam on May 21st. So the game is going to be awesome. It has Steam achievement. And that was one more thing I was going to... How does Steam achievements work in a game that doesn't want, because that always felt like a good point about Mass Effect 2, where they got an achievement, you have achievement of saving all the crew.
Right.
And then that makes you min-max the actual intelligence and break the game's logic, in a way.
Yeah, so we have been thinking a lot about how we want to handle the achievements, and personally, I have been very vocal within the team about, I do not want any achievement that is going to affect any choice you make in the game. So the achievements are probably going to be relatively superficial for people. just purely progression based, like I got to, X far in the game or whatever, which is the general goal of the game anyway, so it's not like adding an achievement to it is going to like change too much. But yeah, I didn't want any I hated those achievements where it'd be like, oh, get the good ending, oh, get the bad ending, because it incentivizes choice in particular ways, and it changes the way you play through if you're that kind of a player. You'll go the full Paragon route, then you'll go the full Renegade route, and I really didn't want any of that business in my game. So
Mass Effect 1 seemed a little less of that, where it's good or bad, and then there's the part where you have the Rachni Queen, and you're like, oh, this could be either way, and they only incentivize saving her. It's they only incentivize with this stupid, worthless thing by saving her when both parts are equally valid to a future. It's
Yeah, it's really important. I worry, achievement design is one of those things, people have struggled with it since achievements have been kind of made, and
I have an idea if you want.
Yeah, bring it. Let's do this.
And it might get you a lot of publicity because I think it sounds really dumb and it'll make people on the internet angry.
Okay. I'm a fan of this already.
Okay, so you release the game same day on your website. Make a official Vagabond Dog Steam achievement unlocker for people who hate video games and only care about meaningless.
Oh, value. you mean just immediately unlock all the achievements?
Yeah, it doesn't. You don't even play the game, and it only.
Why? I wouldn't even bother. Just why not just bake that into the game?
What?
Literally, you can just access a console inside of the game and just turn on all the achievements.
Or that.
Not even make them go to my website.
Or just make Crappy Dog high scores all the achievements. Just
But isn't it a choice to get a high score in Crappy Dog? Don't you have to choose to do that?
I'm not a game designer. I'm sorry. You got to talk to your
I need to talk to a therapist is probably the best answer because I have lost my mind making this.
Psychologist, therapist is way too much. And that's the end of my interview with Justin. It kind of went off the rails from there. I've never had to cut an interview, not just for time, but for content, such as we started talking about Ghost Dad. We talked about Tom Cruise's secret life behind Scientology, HBO accidental porn, and a lot of other stuff. It was a weird interview, but I really enjoyed it. I hope you did too. I'm going to try to be doing these things a lot more, constantly, because this was, recorded in, April, so I'm going to try to be less of a lazy shit and get these out more often. Also, I am looking for an actual theme song and an actual podcast artwork. Right now, whatever I have will probably be placeholder, this Rayman music is going to be placeholder. I'm not doing this as for the exposure thing. I have an idea for who to do the art, so that it might be full there, but I will do this on commission. My email is david@mixedupzombies.com. My Twitter is MixedUpzombies if you want to follow me. I guess check out Always Sometimes Monsters. I also have my website, MixedUpzombies.com. Plug. But yeah, also if you're interested in being part of the interview, showing me your video game, I don't have a lot of time, but I tried to play some of these games, and I am gonna start trying to do videos on that. So hopefully this will be better, and hopefully a lot of stuff I shot all in 2013 will come. A lot of it's gonna have to be appended, because some of this stuff's we're talking about stuff that has come out, gone, and disappeared all at once. So So we'll see if I keep any of my old stuff that I shot and never edited. Thank you for listening, and if you're a long-time listener, thank you for putting up with my bullshit. And I will hopefully hear from you soon. I will hope you will hear from me. Thank you.